I was going to invite you to stay up here with me because this is difficult to do. You know what? Let's talk about, we're working through those elements from the prior slide, right? You have to have a well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of the particular social groups. Let's use our fact scenario with Hector for just you and I have a dialogue about it.
That's great.
So a minute ago you said Hector has to express his fear. Hector's 17. He didn't witness these events of the death of his cousins. How do you think you might ask him to articulate his fear, or what do you think he's likely to say?
I'm thinking, at least in our first meetings, Hector might say that bad things happened, that things were rough in his family, and that might take a lot more individual questioning to try to get out at him. But I might ask Hector if there's anybody back home that he would give us his permission to speak with.
Certainly, I think the grandmother who knew about the death of her other grandchildren might be someone we want to get a lot of detail from. But also, how do you guys remember being 17? Would you have told a young woman like Claire Thomas that you were afraid? Or would you have been the tough, macho, I'm too cool for words kid? Recently this summer, we had a happy-go-lucky teenager working with some pro bono counsel. Every time they saw him, he was smiling, really cheerful, until he tried to commit suicide. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but part of what's happening in these children's lives is it's never been safe for them to show fear or to share their concerns. And they're in a new country, and they don't know who to trust. When this young man is in treatment now and he's doing well, but when he was able to be asked, why did you try to harm yourself, he had watched the news and seen the summer reports that everyone was going to be deported. And he then started to talk about events he'd never shared with his lawyers because he said, frankly, I'd rather I died here and my grandmother didn't see my dead body than she finds me in the yard as she did my relatives. So he had never revealed this information to his lawyers. They instead were actually working on a guardianship and different strategy for him. His case may change because now he's willing to open up more. We do an advanced asylum training, which we can't do in the time we have allotted here today. We tried to make a recording of that today. I think we may keep working on doing those recordings. We're certainly happy to come back when you have the cases you're working on and work faster. But it may be that objectively, any adult who knows the situation in this country and this experience the family suffered would say it is reasonable and objectively true that a boy of Hector's age should fear. Second, persecution. How has he suffered persecution or harm?
Well, we have a lot of things that went on in his school in terms of the idea that the gangs are coming at least 3 times a week to the school and demanding money. That didn't happen in my school. I know that if that had happened to me, I would have considered that to be a pretty big deal when I was 17.
So he has this harm of interrupted education, of fearfulness, of not having the joys of childhood, of being able to play safely. I really have to tell you that this past year or so in all of our interviews, a lot of the children are telling us the school teachers say, no recess, stay in the classroom, it's not safe to go on the playground. But of course there's a more dramatic harm as well. His close, like brothers, cousins, have been killed. And so he's suffered that trauma of death and loss so early in his childhood. It may be that you're going to want to work with us to find social worker, psychologist, or physician assistants in documenting the harm to the child in your case. Sometimes it isn't necessary for the asylum office stage of the case, and the asylum officer, if that's a necessary inquiry, will give you a time of an adjournment and say, could you come back with a medical assessment? There are certainly some physicians that will provide free assessments, but if the firm has the resources to also pay for medical assessment of children, that would be terrific. I don't know that you have to assume it's necessary in every case, but again, if you have a child who's unable to articulate all the harm, or they don't have scars in their body, they didn't have property taken from them, and you want to thoroughly document this connection, you may want to do it through expert testimony. And then here's this critical element. We know that he's been harmed, we know he has fear, but is it on account of one of the protected grounds? And the Real ID Act of 2005 said it doesn't have to be the sole reason that gangs are trying to hurt him, a group the government cannot control. But it has to be a central reason one of these protected grounds, are they going after Hector and his family because of race, religion, political opinion, national origin, or membership in a particular social group? So Claire, do you have a thought, just real quickly before we move into the particular social group?
I think we should look more at Hector's family in terms of a particular social group. Is there anything we can do with that?
We're going to take a look.
Okay.
Okay, I love asking questions. I know she's going to answer the way I want. It's a law professor's dream, right? You always know the person you're going to call on to get the answer so you can go on and talk about this really hard stuff.